Okay. Hi, everybody. So today we're going to talk about the 18 sects of Buddhism, how they subdivided and along what lines. And so first I'm going to read to you the 18 different sects. Okay, and this is from my book, Sacred Snakes. You can pick it up at any bookstore. Actually, you can't. You have to order it on Amazon. But anyway, I looked at one of these groups, the Lokuttaravadins, and they are the last school of the Mahasamgikas. And these guys had some really interesting ideas about who the Buddha was. And basically, all these different philosophical schools, what they were concerned with, most all of them, were the following items. What constituted the self? How does karma work? How do our actions work? How do they take place over time? Who the Buddha was? And what ultimately exists? Is there anything that has real objective existence or reality? Okay? So as we talked about last week, we knew that the first schism between the sects divided along the Mahasamgikas, or the great majority, and the Theravadins, the more orthodox group. Okay? So I'm going to read to you how these broke out. Okay? From the Mahasamgikas, there formed the Gokulika, the Chaitika, the Ekavayara Harikas, and from them, the Lokuttaravadins. From the Sthaviravadins, there formed the Haimavata, the Vatsiputriya, the Sarvastivadin, the Vibhajivadin, and from the Vibhajivadin, the Theravadins. Okay, so you have one lineage from the Mahasamgikas that end with the Lokuttaravadins, and you have one lineage that stems from the Sthaviravadins that ends with the Theravadins. Okay, now, who were these guys? All right, the Lokuttaravadins are a very, very interesting bunch. They were one of the first groups who really wanted to see the Buddha not as a human being, but something beyond human, supranormal. In other words, they're the first group that started to focus on the Buddha as a means of externalizing the means of your salvation, something outside of yourself who could help you. Okay? All right. Now, so for these guys, what they believe is that the Buddha is not just a man. The Buddha is an extraordinary figure, somehow above humans. So one of the famous pieces from the Vinaya Pitaka of the Lokuttaravadins, and I want to mention Lokuttaravadins literally means the Vadin teaching of the Lokuttara. And Lokuttara means above Uttara, the Loka, or world. So their name means literally the teaching of those who believe the Buddha is above the world, more than worldly, extra worldly. Okay, so this is one of their my favorite passages from their Vinaya Pitaka. The eye of the Buddhas with clear sight, those who crush old age and death, as well as make the unrestrained restrained, is of many kinds and works in many ways. The conduct of the Blessed One is beyond the world, and the root of its merit is beyond the world. The walking, standing, sitting, and laying down of the sage, in other words, the Buddha, is beyond the world. The body of the Sugata, or the well-gone one, the one who goes along well, which causes our bonds to existence to be destroyed, that body is also beyond the world. There should be no doubt about that. The sage's wearing of the monk's robe is beyond the world. As to this, there is no doubt. The eating of food by the Sugata is also beyond the world. The teaching of Nagas and of men is to be thought of as beyond all worlds. And I will proclaim the power of those Buddhas, whose enlightenment is the best as it really is. Okay, now these guys are referring to the fact that, first of all, there were multiple Buddhas, and Siddhartha Gautama was merely one of them, but again, we have no historical knowledge of this, and we think that it's more of an urge on the part of the redactors, who we're going to talk about in a minute, to understand that somehow Siddhartha Gautama was not the first one of many, and thereby somehow normalize this practice of Buddhism. Okay, so those are the Lakotaravadins, who believe that the Buddha is above and beyond the world. And what we're going to see is that the Lakotaravadins are a wonderful bridge group. While they're counted among the Nikaya sects, their ideas about the Buddha being divine forms a very important idea and sort of bridges into the, what word am I looking for now? Into the Mahayana, the great vehicle. Because in many of the Mahayana sects, the sects of the great vehicle, the idea that the Buddha is beyond the world is a very important idea. Okay? So that's who those guys were. Now, I want to look at our friend Skilton here, who talks about these schools. And the ones I want to talk about the most here are, I just started with, the Mahasamgika school, which is the Lakotaravadins. All right, now let's move on to another one of these schools, the Saviravadan. Now, one of the things, these are the guys who give birth eventually to the Theravadins. They are a very orthodox group. They believe that the Buddha was a human being, not above the world like the Lakotaravadins. That the Buddha was a human being, and in fact, the fact that he is a human being means that we can all obtain enlightenment. Okay? It maintains that there is only one bodhisattva. And we know from our lectures during the residency that a bodhisattva pertains to one who is going to be a Buddha, but is not yet a Buddha. Okay? And they believe that Maitreya, who is the future Buddha, is waiting in the space of Tushita heaven to have the lifetime in which he becomes fully enlightened, and he will come down to our earth and revitalize the Dharma. Okay? So that's what the Sthaviravadins and also the Theravadins, their later school, their later birth school, is all about. And they also talk about the fact that it is in this school that the idea of the arhats not being able to slide is very important. They can't backslide. Uh-oh. Oh. Wait a minute.